The year was 1910. The German Empire finds itself surrounded by enemies from all sides. But if anything, Germany's ambitions only grew despite appearing on the map only 40 years ago. With many eyes set on the African continent. Germany was a young empire, so it was late to the partitioning of the African cake. Now the only way to acquire more colonies was through war with the traditional great powers. Thus the Schlieffen Plan was born, aimed at ending a hypothetical war in only 40 days and securing Germany's position in the world for all imaginable time. The new generation of generals and officers were incredibly confident in this plan despite the warnings of the older generals that such a war was somehow unwinnable considering Germany's strategic position. To resist the warmongers of the Entente, and particularly the French, Germany, Italy and Austria formed the Triple Alliance. But Germany had to choose who they wished to rely on in a future war. The choice fell upon Austria as it was the most interested in fighting the Russian menace, as well as contesting their influence in the Balkans. In order to properly support the eastern flank, the Imperial Army began forming new divisions which were supposed to hold off the Russians until the French are defeated. In the meantime, the government was most concerned with building up Germany's industrial base in order to effectively survive the coming war. The first stages of the industrial build-up took on the form of the West Plan, aimed at increasing the industrial capacity of the western regions of the empire. The industrial base was also necessary in order to maintain the Kaiser's new favorite plaything, the Kriegsmarine. Meanwhile, in Germany's political sphere, democratic forces continued gaining popularity among the voters. German conservative and nationalist leaders were becoming keenly aware of the incoming wave of democratization of the empire. This motivated the Kaiser to order a further increase of the armed forces to keep the Democrats in check while also helping secure the generals' influence in the decision-making process of the state. That September, the Ottoman state offered the German companies to construct the Berlin-Baghdad railway. This would go a long way to swaying the sick man of Europe into Germany's camp. It did not happen without the British complaining that their influence is being threatened in the region. In October, the Balkan countries went to war with the Ottomans, kicking them out of what little European holdings they still had. One good thing for Germany that came of this war and the subsequent Second Balkan War as it became to be known, was that now it was guaranteed that both the Ottomans and Bulgarian statesmen will be more pro-German, having been attacked by countries that were aligned with the French and the Russians. The Triple Alliance could offer them the world, while the Entente could not. However, that did not negate the fact of significant Serbian expansion in the region, as it strengthened Russia's position, making Austria's southern flank extremely vulnerable. This was compounded by the fact that the Austrian Empire had a very large population of Slavs. The two countries had almost gone to war with one another over Austria's annexation of Bosnia in 1908. War then was avoided, but in the future, the world may not be as fortunate. In late 1913 and in the new year, German theorists began experimenting with new technologies, concluding that if a war is to break out, victory will come from the army having serious air support on the battlefield. But the field testing of this new technology was not yet complete because of a new crisis. A crisis caused by some damned foolish thing in the Balkans, as Bismarck would have said in the old days. A pro-Serbian assassin killed the heir to the Austrian throne in Bosnia. The Austrians were hesitant, so the German officials granted the ally a blank check, as this was perhaps the last opportunity for the German Empire to prove itself on the world stage and secure its position for all imaginable time. But the Serb government rejected Austria's ultimatum, causing a build-up at the border. In response, the Russians mobilized their army, which caused the Kaiserreich to respond with its own mobilization. In the German army, all leave was cancelled, and the state declared a state of a possible beginning of war. The army by the border began taking its positions both in the west and in the east. When the first artillery shells were fired at Belgrade, so too did a big war in Europe begin. Now that war was imminent, the economy was getting pivoted to a war footing. The newly formed OHL expected the war to end by the time the leaves fall off the trees. Almost immediately, in July, the German army crossed the border of Luxembourg. Then, in accordance with the pre-war planning, crossed the border of Belgium and engaged in combat with its armed forces. Using the element of surprise, the German army quickly crossed the river and captured the Liège fortress. It was only a matter of time before most of Belgium was occupied.
Der Tod kann auch die Trommel rühren, du kannst den Wirbel im Herzen spüren. Er trommelt lang, er trommelt laut, er schlägt auf einer toten Haut. Flandern in Not, in Flandern reitet der Tod, in Flandern reitet der Tod. Als den ersten Wirbel geschlagen, da hat's das Blut vom Herzen getragen. Als den zweiten Wirbel schlug, den Landsknecht Mann zu Grabe trug. Flandern in Not, in Flandern reitet der Tod. In Flandern reitet der Tod. Der dritte Wirbel ist so lang gegangen, bis der Landsknecht von Gott seinen Segen.
However, some remnants remained, being propped up by the French. The German army failed to develop the offensive out of Belgium, getting stopped by the incoming French forces.
Der Tod kann Rappen und Schimmel reiten, der Tod kann
In the east, all expectations about the Russian army were shattered in the minds of German generals. They have almost approached the city of Danzig, almost encircling the army group in East Prussia, and took Austrian Lemberg. Though some timely reinforcements managed to completely stop the Russian steamroller. Those who panicked, like General von Prittwitz, were replaced with more calculating individuals like Hindenburg and Ludendorff. To secure the eastern flank, a general offensive was needed to push the Russians out of the border regions. The German army waited until spring to begin a major offensive into Poland. It was an absolute success, managing to encircle many Russian divisions. It took the army just over a month to reach Warsaw. A victory here would secure a strong victory in this offensive. This victory was needed desperately as it would help with the stretched out supply lines. The Russians too were aware of this, resisting against all odds against the German onslaught. battle lasted many weeks, with the defenders eventually succumbing to flanking maneuvers from the north. The battle for Poland was won. By summer of that year, it became clear in the minds of the German generals that they must take full control over the governance and economy of the empire to achieve final victory.